What's up? Today we are doing a book podcast on the book Refugee by Alan Gratz. Today in my group we have Sam.
Good afternoon.
Ashley. And Alessandro.
Well, hello there.
The book has 3 different stories of 3 different kids in 3 different time eras.
The first one that is introduced is Joseph. He's Jewish. He's around 12 years old, and he lived in around the time where Hitler was like in power.
So another timeline is when Isabel suffered from a little resources because the Soviet Union fell with them, and then they needed more food for their family, so they built a raft to get away from Cuba to go to Florida.
The most current story was Muhammad's story, which takes place in 2015. He is living in Syria at the time where the war between rebels and the country is pretty much it's a country civil war where they're fighting against each other. So they're trying to escape from all the violence and go up the country up to Germany. But on the way, they find a lot of violence and have to overcome much adversity.
And the book really starts with a bang. Like it starts with the Night of Broken Glass. Literally, the stormtroopers storm into their house and ravage it.
Yeah, and Muhammad's
Like,
story.
bam, bam.
Muhammad's story technically does start off with a bang when they try to escape, but their cars gets shot up. So.
Well, Isabel's story started with a smooth type of flow.
Hers was like peaceful.
Yeah, hers is
Yeah.
peaceful.
It didn't really go into like the whole
Like, bang,
we're
bang.
starving.
Like,
Out of all
I'm hungry! Not like that.
The way how all these 3 characters are similar is because they're all refugees, and they're trying to escape their homeland.
Pretty much.
Their homeland to go,
They're all escaping from their tyrants.
because like they have the person that rules their countries are like dictators, so they only care about themselves and like mistreat people.
A person that I feel has more of a subtle impact on the story is Walid. He is Muhammad's younger brother.
But
And
poor soul.
Ashley has a quote of Walid, how emotionless he is.
Ali sat still as a statue, and he looked like one too. He was covered with a fine gray powder from head to foot, like he'd taken a bath in dry concrete mix. It later says Walid's eyes were alive but empty. So this quote explains how empty he was, how traumatized he was at such a young age. He only lived in the time where all the stuff in Syria was happening.
Imagine
He doesn't remember the time before the Civil War started. He doesn't remember a time without war, without being afraid of bombings every single day.
As did Ruthie.
Yeah.
Yeah, as
Yeah.
did Ruthie.
She was born straight into being afraid of always being taken into a concentration camp.
So basically, Ruthie and Wally connect somehow.
And they're both the younger sibling.
Out of all
Yeah.
the 3 stories, the Alan Gratz like combines them to make them really similar. Like what you said about the
Like, they
younger
connect
siblings.
them.
They were born in like an era where all of this is happening, and the main characters all are suffering because it's not a good
Yeah, if
time
you
to
look in
live.
the back of the book, they all have maps of where they're going and where
Yep.
they came from. And a lot of them start with the other left.
And each
Yeah.
one has a certain destination, but get blown off course to a different area. And if they even end up reaching the destination, it always ends up with some sort of.
Yeah, they all had
Loss.
an unexpected, like a block in their way that they didn't really expect at first.
Yeah. Pretty much that.
We will not tell you exactly what the block is due to spoilers, but read the book to
Wait,
find
if
out.
you read the book, it will hit you hard. It will like BAM! It'll go BAM on you! I cried 3 times in this book.
I cried once.
Once?
Once.
You're emotionless! That's not enough!
I cried way too many times.
Hey,
honestly.
That's it. That's the person I'm looking for.
I cried no times. My name's Waleed.
Apparently, okay.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay, this is gonna be kind of shocking and kind of sad for me to say out loud, but I didn't really know what Hitler did or who he was. So with Joseph's story, I had to look some things up. So when I got my article, it was easier for me to understand what was going on, because like I didn't know what he did. So when I learned that he was a terrible man. He tortured the Jews, like made their life like a living hell.
So that they would have the purest race.
So yeah, that I feel like that affected my reading at first, but like eventually after I looked it up, or like I didn't know what a stormtrooper was. My first thought was Star Wars.
I mean, it's reasonable. You know?
Yeah.
And I didn't really know about the background of Muhammad's story.
I didn't know
until
that
I
either.
actually
I
had
didn't know that too.
all of us. Okay.
For
yes.
one, I think that's kind
All of us didn't really know, I guess. So
Most
I
of
did
you.
some research into it, and I found that at the time, many civil wars were happening, but there were many tyrants in the Middle East.
Yeah.
So once Syria saw that all these rebel groups were winning their civil wars, some of the wars were even like weren't actually even wars. They're peaceful and ended in their victory. So when they saw this, they took their example and put it into action. And when they tried to protest, the first reaction Assad had was to open fire on them in a crowd. That's how all these rebel groups started, and some of the rebel groups formed their own groups, and as we know today, the group ISIS was formed because of this. So if this civil war never happened, then there would probably be no ISIS.
I feel that Isabel's story is the most diverse in terms of what's happening with her time. Because Muhammad and Joseph are both trying to escape one tyrant that's against who they are, basically. And Isabel is just trying to
Like
escape
she's not allowed to
someone.
leave.
yeah.
She's not allowed to leave. Like
Yeah.
because like there was
this dictator Castro, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
there was a lot of issues over there, and eventually people started like leaving because they're like,
Yeah.
this isn't a good place to live. After a while, I guess he didn't want everyone to leave, so he'd be by himself. So he made a law that if you were to leave, you were punished.
Thrown in jail
You would be
or killed.
thrown in jail for 2 years.
Yeah, and Isabel left because he removed that ban for
A short period of
hours.
time.
Like,
Yeah.
She didn't necessarily have to escape. No one was necessarily like hunting her down like in Muhammad's and Joseph's story. It was more of a fight or flight situation. Whether you stayed there and try to like fight for your life or leave. And
Basically, that's the
survive.
only two options.
Would you like?
Can I just say one thing? What I like about Muhammad's personality is that he would do anything. He would even take a bullet for his family, just to make his family safe and sound.
Okay, and I also feel like that does tie into other stories because every kid is really puts their family first. Like they don't care about what happens to them. They just want to make sure their
They're safe.
family,
Say the quote.
the other families
They're
go home
safe.
safe. And a quote Sam found that was very like really shows how much that they didn't want their parents to feel bad about the whole what they were going through. It really shows in this quote.
It's Muhammad was so tired, he started to cry, but he did it softly, so his parent wouldn't hear. He hadn't cried like this since that first night bombs had started to fall on Aleppo.
Yeah, and in every story, they try to like suffer quietly, so their parents don't
Here, like
feel guilty because they're in that situation because of them for the most part.
Like they probably feel like they brought them into this situation.
yeah,
Yep,
Like there's nothing pretty much you could do. It's like
they're like kids. Who wouldn't know kids would suffer like
Like,
that
for,
in their
like,
early age?
this is like a connection to like our society right now with the immigration. It's not the kid's fault that they were born this race or this religion or stuff like that. they were born in this decision, and I feel like a lot of parents feel bad because they're stuck. They can't do anything because they're there.
They're different religions.
And like here, they're also refugees. So they moved to the U.S. for a better life for their kids and their family.
Because everybody really deserves an equal chance of having a safe and happy life.
More opportunity for them.
Basically Isabel's story, because she's an immigrant. She went from Cuba to Florida, which is the U.S. They went there for a better life because there wasn't enough resources for them to live there. It was just terrible.
Basically, all of them are immigrants, you know?
Yeah, no kid is just gonna go up to their parent and be like, "Hey, can we go to a different country? I don't like it here."
That's
no
not
one's gonna
how
do
it
that.
works. That's not
The
how it
parents
works.
make the self-conscious decision to move. And they do it not for themselves but for their family, so they could be safe.
So they could live a better life and not live how
And
they
more
lived in the past.
opportunities for them.
Okay, so Amanda found a quote about his whose mom was it? It was Joseph's mom.
Joseph's mom,
Joseph's
like,
mom
saying
I got it.
something
Okay,
very significant.
I got this. She said, "You can live life as a ghost, waiting for death to come, or you can dance." And that really just plays a really significant quote that every story could really benefit from. Because in Muhammad's story, his whole thing is living his life invisible. And in Isabel's story, they're like, at some points they are trying to like stay quieter. And the context of that quote was something was about to happen and everybody was like very sullen about it, and everyone was very sad and sullen about the situation at hand, and she was the only person dancing because she wanted to enjoy the life she had while she had it, because she knew that
It may not last.
It might not last
It may
as
not
long
last.
as they would have, as long as they may have hopes.
And for those of you people who read the graphic novel The Mouse, a quote that I kind of found similar to that novel was in Joseph's story, where it says the Nazis didn't care how much money they had, how many jewels. It wasn't about that. He was playing with them. This was another game, like a cat playing with a mouse before he ate it. This is kind of the example of how the Nazis and Jews were portrayed, like in the graphic novel Mouse. So this shows that multiple authors, not only the author of Mouse, saw this as like an example of
I didn't
the
notice
Nazis
that
and
part.
Jews.